Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to uncover together something truly magnificent, the architecture of life itself. I mean, have you ever stopped to wonder how we actually make sense of the absolute explosion of biodiversity on our planet? From microscopic organisms all the way up to massive blue whales, from the grass in your yard to towering redwoods, biological classification is this incredible, highly structured system we use for organizing the sheer diversity of life. It's literally a roadmap of existence. And honestly, understanding it completely changes how you look at the plants in your garden, or even the pets hanging out in your living room.
So how do scientists actually pull this off? How do they organize every single living thing on Earth into a system that makes logical sense? Well, to wrap your head around this, I want you to picture a set of Russian nesting dolls. You know the wooden dolls where you open the largest one and there's a slightly smaller one inside, and you just keep opening them until you get to that tiny, solid doll right in the very center. Biological classification works exactly the same way. We're grouping organisms from the highly specific all the way up to the incredibly broad.
Okay, let's dive into this. It turns out classification isn't just some simple single-step sorting process. It involves a hierarchy of steps, and each step represents a distinct rank or category. Because each category is a part of this overall arrangement, we call the whole shebang the taxonomic hierarchy. And each of these individual categories or ranks, they're commonly referred to as a taxon, or taxa if you're speaking in the plural. It's absolutely crucial to understand that these taxa aren't just arbitrary physical groupings based on looks. They are distinct biological entities representing real, hardwired evolutionary relationships.
Section 1. Starting small. Species and genus.
Right at the very bottom, the absolute smallest, most specific nesting doll is the species. Taxonomic studies consider a species to be a group of individual organisms with fundamental, deep similarities. You should easily be able to distinguish one species from another closely related one just based on distinct morphological differences. For example, check out these scientific names: Manguifera indica for the mango, Solanum tuberosum for the potato, and Panthera leo for the lion. The second words here, indica, tuberosum, and leo, are what we call specific epithets. They identify the exact specific organism, and you should easily be able to tell them apart, right? I mean, you wouldn't confuse a mango with a lion, but what about those first words?
Those first words represent our next step up, the genus. When we zoom out just slightly, we aggregate closely related species into a genus. A genus comprises species that have way more characters in common with each other than with species of other genera. Take the lion, Panthera leo. It shares the Panthera genus with the leopard, Panthera pardus, and the tiger, Panthera tigris. They share a ton of common features. But if you look at your house cat, it belongs to an entirely different genus called Felis. They're related for sure, but they are distinctly separate at this specific level.
So, we've grouped our similar species into a genus. But what happens when we zoom out again? What happens when we group closely related genera together into the next, slightly larger nesting doll?
Section 2. Expanding out. Family and order.
The next category up is family. A family contains a group of related genera, but, and this is key, with fewer similarities compared to the genus and species levels. This is where we really start to see the system scale up. And this brilliantly illustrates the concept. Remember the big cats in genus Panthera and the small house cats in genus Felis? Well, at the family level, they're grouped together into the family Felidae. Basically, they're all cats. Similarly, if you compare a cat and a dog, you'll definitely see some similarities, but obviously major differences too. That's exactly why dogs are separated out into their own distinct family, Canidae. Moving one step larger, we hit order. Now, while those lower categories are based on numerous similar characters, higher taxonomic categories like order are identified based on aggregates of characters. An order is an assemblage of families that exhibit just a few similar characters. This is the nesting doll where our cats, family Felidae, and our dogs, family Canidae, are finally brought back together. They are both placed in the animal order Carnivora, and that's based on their shared meat-eating characteristics, which is probably something your dog and cat might actually agree on at dinner time.
But wait, life is vast, right? We have carnivores, sure. But what about completely different types of animals? How on earth do we go about grouping these highly diverse orders together?
Section 3. Broad strokes. Class and phylum. The category of class includes related orders. Think about humans, monkeys, and gorillas for a second. We all belong to the order Primata. But we share fundamental biological traits with tigers, cats, and dogs, which, as we just saw, are in the order Carnivora.
So both primata and carnivora are placed inside the much larger nesting doll known as class Mammalia. Yep, this is where humans and our furry pets finally share a taxonomic home. Getting even broader now, classes comprising animals like fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals all get grouped into the next higher category, phylum. I know, a fish and a human look literally nothing alike, but we actually both share common features, like the presence of a notochord and a dorsal hollow neural system at some stage of development. Basically, that's the early foundations for a spinal cord. So we all go into phylum Chordata. Now, a really quick note, in the world of plants, classes with a few similar characters are assigned to a parallel category called division instead of phylum. Same concept, just a different word.
Section 4. The highest rank, kingdoms. All right, all animals belonging to various phyla are assigned to the absolute highest category called kingdom Animalia. Every insect, every fish, every bird, every dog, and every human sits in this one giant container. And on the completely opposite side, all plants from various divisions are grouped distinctly into kingdom Plantae. At this level, the divide is incredibly profound and fundamental.
The golden rule of taxonomy. So, we've built our dolls from the tiny solid one all the way to the massive outer shell. Now, what's really interesting about this arrangement is seeing the ascending hierarchy all laid out. This maps our entire zoom-out journey perfectly. We start at the bottom with species, and as we move progressively upward, we encompass more and more life until we reach kingdom at the very top.
Let's just walk through those ascending steps one last time so they really lock in. We start super specific with species. Then, related species form a genus. Next, related genera form a family. And those families bundle into an order. Orders group up into a class, which then form a phylum for animals or a division for plants. And finally, absolutely everything is contained within a kingdom. To make these abstract Latin terms a bit more concrete, let's compare two totally different organisms side by side, a human and a housefly. A human is species Sapiens, genus Homo, family Hominidae, order Primata, class Mammalia, and phylum Chordata. Meanwhile, a housefly is species Domestica, genus Musca, family Musidae, order Diptera, class Insecta, and phylum Arthropoda. Seeing it laid out side by side like this really drives home how precisely scientists can map out where an organism fits into the grand scheme of life, no matter how wildly different they are.
But here is the absolutely crucial takeaway from all of this: the rule of diminishing similarities. The source text puts it perfectly. Lower the taxa, more are the characteristics that the members within the taxon share. Higher the category, greater is the difficulty of determining the relationship to other taxa at the same level. Basically, when you're at the species level, organisms look and act very much alike. But as you climb that ladder to class or phylum, the whole problem of classification becomes incredibly complex because the shared traits become much fewer and highly generalized. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought to end on. If, as we zoom out, the shared traits become so incredibly sparse and relationships so hard to determine, what happens when we find something entirely new? I mean, how will scientists use this very system to classify the highly unusual, alien-like life forms we are bound to discover deep in our uncharted oceans, or hey, perhaps on other planets tomorrow? The architecture of life is incredibly robust, but the universe is full of surprises. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.